All right, welcome back to the Jiu Jitsu Mindset. We're glad you're here for another episode. My name is Pete Deely, and I'm here with my professor, Professor Lucas Rubbo. Professor, good
Hello,
morning.
everyone. Good morning, Pete. Welcome back. Great to see you. How's the week?
The week has been good. I was thinking you probably only could have brought so much of that delicious Brazilian coffee back from the farm. I'm glad that we have an alternative for you with submission coffee, which, by the way,
For sure.
if for those of you listening, this is the first time you've heard us, uh, submission coffee is a project that we have with a local family, and they have a farm in Brazil. They're the Peugeot family, and then they grow their beans in Brazil. They send them up to Chandler, Arizona, roast them locally, and then the professor and I have a line with them called Submission Coffee, and I'm currently on about cup 4 for the day, so I'm very caffeinated, professor. So I know it's not the same, when you were back home in Brazil, you were eating it
Oh, it's
right
so
off the
good, man.
tree.
So good. Right?
Now, if I recall, there's supposed to be a bag with my name on it somewhere at your house. So don't be drinking that coffee. Save
Still
that bag
here.
for you.
Not sure for how long, but still.
Okay. So, Professor, uh, I'm curious, today as I think about my training as a beginner versus, your training as an expert, and me competing as a beginner versus you competing as an expert. I think about the way I make decisions both in training and in the few competitions that I've done.
Mhm.
And when I look at myself, there are times when I make a conscious decision to do something, and there are times when I just react, both in training and in competition. So I thought maybe we could compare and contrast a little bit, like the experts'
Yes.
experience in those situations and the beginner's experience of that. And I wanted to start with the question: when you're in competition, you have decades now of preparation for
Mhm.
all of this. When you are in competition, are your decisions generally where the executive part of your brain, like you're making them consciously, or by the time you're at competition, are you just reacting to your opponent because you basically have uh, trained your instincts? It
Uh-huh.
talks about educated instincts, and so
Yes.
most of your decisions are more, coming from your lizard brains. Like, your body knows what to do just because you don't have to even tell it. So
Uh-huh.
what's the competition experience like in that way for you?
Peter, first of all, that's a great subject for we talk about and try to relate this with other areas on our life, right?
Yes.
Uh, I believe the instance on those situations they come with a lot of preparation,
Right.
right? Because sometimes you might have a natural instant for something that is happening, and that instant sometimes won't lead you to the right path right away,
Right.
right? Sometimes your instant is gonna be running, like run, get out of there.
Right.
Instead, like let's do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I believe like a little bit of a lot actually out of that instant comes with that preparation or with the training,
Right.
right? So on the moment that you need to take a fast decision, you're leading yourself to that day, to that point where hopefully that fast decision will be the right decision,
Right.
right? And and this, on my opinion, they can come only with a lot of training,
Right.
preparation, and you were training also, like Hickson said, your instance for the right moment,
Right.
right? Because especially in a tournament environment or like a firefighter, right? In a whatever in a
Yes. Yes.
situation, the instant is leading by all the preparation that they had for that moment.
Right.
If they don't have that, the natural instinct for everyone most of the times will be just run away and do other things instead.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think a little bit like that famous quote by Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan
Right.
until they get punched in the face. Right.
Correct.
And so in my mind, part of what he's saying there is that your ability to make a decision about the next move can be compromised by your fight or flight reflex, right? So,
Uh-huh.
like what you're saying, like run away. Um, and so, I mean, I know in your preparation for a competition, you have a plan
Mhm.
that you go into that fight with. When you reflect on like the competitions where you were the most successful versus the least successful, was it your ability to think about how to execute your plan that made you more successful, or was it your ability to just react in the moment and where you weren't necessarily thinking, but you knew what to do because you had trained for, that situation?
Yes, I think it's more about being able to train all those different scenarios
Hmm.
and prepare yourself for the reaction,
Right.
right? So yes, you do have a plan to execute it on those situations,
Right.
but your body is reacting before you actually notice,
Yeah.
right? Like you're gonna get a grip and try to pass a guard, and you're already going to the other side because that's what you're training for that specific instant.
Right.
And we talk a lot about this here on when you get to that level of preparation, you start to anticipate all the moves.
Yeah.
So the little body language can tell you
Right.
if it's going to be a right or left, if it's going to be a grip on the sleeve or the collar, and
Yeah.
and all that. And you can see that way more ahead with this preparation. So in a way, yes, is a instant, but is a training instant.
Right.
Right? You're leading yourself to be reacting so fast, and let things be more like not much weight, on yourself. Like
Right.
not thinking on thinking too much.
Yes.
Not have the perfect strategy because, like I said, on the moment that you
Yeah.
focus so much on that strategy, you get a punch in the face and everything changes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Without a doubt. I mean, from the very first jujitsu experience I had,
Mhm.
the metaphor that stayed with me was the metaphor of like learning a language, and that uh, the the very beginning of my experience that is fresh for me, long time ago for you probably, is like I couldn't even learn my letters. Like if we're
Uh-huh.
talking about like a language, like I couldn't ABC. I felt like it was months before I could do even the simplest thing, co- you know,
Yeah.
even while focused concentration. Like I know he just told me what to do. He just showed me what to do with left hand, right hand. Like I have the instruction is not the problem. The athlete is the problem. It's my problem. And so building like, okay, I probably can get to A, B, C, and D at this point in my jujitsu vocabulary. Um, but when I think about speaking, as much as we have this idea of like think before you speak,
Mhm.
mostly we're just talking, like we have a general idea
Yes.
where we're going to go, and it's coming out of our mouth without each word having to be thought of. And,
Uh-huh.
and so for me as a beginner competitor, I'm at the very beginning of being able to like string together letters into words. But when I think about me as a training partner and as somebody in training, trying to find the balance between intensity and not intensity, like going slowly so I learn the movements,
Yes.
but then working my way up to experiencing the movements at a more real time
Mhm.
speed. So when you think about training and intensity, like how do you have a sense of like, okay, here's how maybe you as an expert obviously start at a different place, but in general, like, do you think um, people need to start slowly, or is there a natural rhythm that goes, no, you really, don't worry about that. Do it whatever speed makes sense. I mean, what's your
Yes.
advice that way?
I believe you need to start slowly.
Okay.
And I gotta explain why. I think we are leading ourselves to the best as you can be.
Hmm.
Okay. So everything that you do in life, you're gonna try to be the best as you can be on that specific area.
Right.
Let me take a comparison of two different type of students, right? You have
Right.
the one they're gonna practice everything super slow, gonna think a lot before you do everything,
Right.
not because they want, but because they need.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
right? Okay, that's right. okay, that's the left, right? You start to control and do whatever the movement it does. And after days or weeks doing, or months doing the same movement, they start to feel comfortable and go for, right, for the speed part and intensity and all this. And then, on the other hand, you're going to have someone that you just going to react and do it right away.
Right.
So now we're talking about, that's those two specific examples. We're talking about instant and someone that needs to think and do it right away.
Right.
What might take from that? The instant person on this specific situation, as like learning something new and doing fast right away, they're not thinking on what they're doing.
Right.
So they don't know what they're doing.
Oh, yes, that's a good point. Right. Right.
They don't know. They just reacting, and maybe for that specific situation, they are reacting the right way. Their instinct is leading them to the right way. Okay. But okay, explain me what you're doing and do it slow. They can't.
Yes. Yes.
Because they're just going through the motions. Right. And I always put that parallel where when we're learning how to drive for the first time.
Right.
You won't get in a Formula One car and drive 200 miles an hour. You're gonna crash on the first. Right there on the corner, right? You start slow in a controlled environment, and you learn how to turn the car to one side, to the other. Okay, now you're a little bit better. Now you can have your driver's license.
Right.
And talking about like be the best as you can be, let's go to the Formula One scenario, right? It's not everyone that know how to drive well can go to Formula One, and it's not about their instincts, it's about how much they train to get there in a slow, in a simulation car, for them be able to go to the course and do everything. So like my take is you need to start learning slow.
Right.
Do the movements and train your body, understand what you're doing. And then after, okay, I know how to do it, I'm comfortable doing those movements, let's start to go fast, because that's the only way that you're actually learning compared to reacting and doing just instinctive things.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I always think about when I see a non-black belt teaching the class is that like the act of being the teacher for the moment, I think would change your relationship to the movement. That if you're required to explain it, then you have to have a different level of mastery than just the person that can do it. And so if you're listening, by the way, and you're we believe that jujitsu is for everyone, and that means that everyone like we don't, if you're past the age that you think you should do it, you're not. Like, and so I'm an old dog, and I can tell you that like you can teach an old dog new tricks. And I will tell you that like if I was if I was your student as a 20-year-old, I think I would have been a much faster learner, and I wouldn't have the restrictions that my body currently gives me. You know, all my joints worked well at 20. You know, I was a good athletic person at 20. But I wonder if at the same point, like I definitely as a beginner, I would have been a faster learner, but because my body is restricted, I have to go slow. Like I don't have a choice in so many things, because I have to generally figure out how to accommodate the position in its proper form versus the form that I can do it. But I think it might have lent to being a more thorough, by the time I'm, you know, however long it takes me to get a black belt, 12, 15 years from now, who knows? I think I will be in control of the movements. Like I'll understand them better because I have no choice other than to be really slow and methodical in it. I mean,
But do you think you would be a faster learner because you'll be able to assimilate on your brain the movements better, or because your body will be able to execute them better?
I think I would be the guy that you talked about. Like I would have been able to see something and mimic it, but the executive part of my brain to say, well, how did you just do what you did? I wouldn't have done. So
yeah, so not necessarily you'll be learning fast.
Yes, right. Like I would look like I would have got better quicker, but I wouldn't have been a better learner, you know, and I would have been much stupider in terms of like tapping and all the rest of it, because I would have had an inflated sense of my capabilities.
And that's the thing, right? Like super athletic people, they tend on overcompensate their athleticism, and then yes, you can see something, and you can make that connection easier with your brain through your muscles, your body, and do the movement,
Right.
but not necessarily you're actually learning what you're doing, right?
Right.
And that's the whole point. So why not like just start slow? Maybe your slower part of the train just gonna be shorter because
Yes.
you have this athleticism, right?
Yeah, and I mean, this idea plays out in my life, like in all kinds of things. I mean, when I think about things that I just enjoy, like playing the guitar, and I'm the world's worst guitar player in many ways. But when I used to play a lot and I played in bands, learning a new song, uh, same thing as an athlete, like as a younger person, I try to play the song at the
Uh-huh.
speed that the song actually from the beginning,
Yes.
and I always would have to catch myself to be like, no, hey, knucklehead, let's just start playing it
Yeah.
slowly and then learn it, and then you'll be able to play it later. But I had to go through that process over and over again. Um,
And if you skip steps,
yes, yeah,
sooner or late the bill will come to you.
yeah,
You need to pay that,
yeah,
because I
that's
was
yeah,
as you were talking about that, I was thinking of my experience training CrossFit like
sure,
two
yeah,
months ago in Brazil. I never done actual CrossFit. I have done a lot of Olympic lifting. That's what I pretty
right,
much is a base of my weightlifting. But those bar muscle ups, and I don't
hmm,
even know the other names.
right,
I never have done before. But on the class, I was muscle everything up
yeah, yeah,
without the technique just to be able to do it, because I didn't want to spend the time actually going slow and learning how to do it, right?
yeah,
And so, yeah, I know exactly what I mean. So if I kept going on CrossFit, one day I will need to step back, years of training just
yes,
to
yes.
properly learn the technique, and then I can move forward again.
Yeah, I mean, I love the CrossFit community I was in for so long. I learned a ton, and it gave a lot to me. And having had different levels of
Yeah.
experience in CrossFit, one thing that was often the case in terms of the difference between genders, like women who came into CrossFit often learned much more quickly because they had less ego about like the
Yeah.
amount of
Yeah.
weight on the bar. So you could teach proper movement to like to women often more easily than you could to the men, because the men were
Uh-huh.
like, I need to load this thing up, and the women were like, well, teach me how to do it. And that kind of yeah, when I played soccer, I had a coach that was like, when we would be uh, in practice, he's like, look, you can pay me now or you can pay me later is the rule of the universe. So if we get excellent in practice, when you get to a game, you're going to really be glad that you paid the price now. Otherwise, in the games, you're not really going to be a good learner in the context of a game. Um, yeah, and we had you brought in one of the greats, Felipe Pena,
Yes.
recently to our school, which was a
Mhm.
real privilege to spend time with him. And uh, and not to say that you were not one of our great, jujitsu players in the world, but I mean, Felipe is quite a storied,
Oh my, yeah.
right?
It's a different everything.
Yeah, he's a big dude too. I didn't expect him. I don't know why it impressed me so much, but
And
like,
that's something amazing about jiu-jitsu, right? Like, what's the chance if you're like basketball, you'll be able to learn,
right.
bring LeBron James to our gym and learn from him, Like, this doesn't happen in other sports, but jiu-jitsu. And you see, again, I said that on class. I'm gonna repeat that on the podcast. What to take
Right.
the best from beyond those legends and super athletes and the best
Yeah.
of the world. When you see them or teaching doing something, if you're a black belt, or being just for a longer time, sometimes you're gonna have something that you have no idea what's going on, and then you are learning that for the very first time.
Right.
But I really like to relearn the movement that I already know for so long,
Yes.
and still get better, can still improve, and see like an extra one or two details that are gonna change everything.
Right.
And that's why those guys, they are what they are, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, that Zen idea of like beginner's mind, right? That we learn
Yeah.
best when we don't have any preconceptions about like,
Uh-huh.
what it should be. And so I mean, as a beginner watching him, um, he had, it appeared to me that there was no extra movements. Like everything was just right where it should be, and even obviously he's instructing us, but the mastery of the movement seemed like he knew exactly where his weight should be, where his
Uh-huh.
hands, all of it. And I don't think he was thinking about it. Like I think he had just grooved in,
Yeah.
that those habits over
Uh-huh.
time. When you were watching him, I mean, did you did that happen? Like, were you able to see, because you have the eyes of an expert, right? Were you able to
Mhm.
see kind of things within the movements he was teaching that you might not have saw without being in the presence of him?
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I had a couple of things that I even told him. I was like, I really like this detail. I
yeah,
never thought about that way
yeah,
for that position that I already know how to do. And that's the thing. Like some of the positions that he showed, I
right.
already know that I do that for like 10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And and you still don't master 100%. And that's the
Hmm.
beauty of jiu-jitsu. It's endless. If you
Yes,
spend a whole week talk about the same specific movement that he showed us, and even him, maybe Roger Grace will get there and gonna
yes, yeah.
teach in a detail, and then whoever else will get to Roger like teach another detail, and it's endless. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I was thinking a little bit about that as I was watching you, watching him, in the sense of like, regardless of where you are in your journey, if you are as masterful at jujitsu as a person can be, if you're Hickson Gracie, and then you put him with Felipe, and you put him with, pick whatever superheroes you
Uh-huh.
want to pick, even at the highest level of mastery, now you have like the little differences between the
Yeah.
masters that now, broaden your vocabulary, like music, right? I mean,
Mhm.
who's the greatest guitar player of all time? It's like, well, you know what? I mean, these guys, there's a group of people that play at the highest level, and they all have their own little unique ways of going at things, which I
And
think,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, 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 no. I find that to be one of the pleasures of jujitsu, is that there's no end to the road. I mean, much like you said on one of our podcasts, like, well, when you get to be a black belt, you can finally start.
Right. And if you see those guys, those legends, those well-named masters on whatever they are masters at,
Right,
in guitar player, be a drummer, be a jiu-jitsu, be a
right,
CrossFit, whatever. When you see them uh, talking about someone or discussing some technique,
right.
it's always the simple things ever.
Yes, yes,
Like I was watching a documentary about drummer. I play drums, if you guys don't know, and
right,
you see all those crazy and fast drummers and those guys that when you watch it for the first time, you really want to keep watching that person play.
right.
And then we see they're talking about Ringo Starr, for example.
Yeah, right,
He's a drummer from the Beatles that never did anything super different or fast.
right.
He's not a drummer that if you don't know how to play, you look at him because he's not doing anything different. But the way how he combined the notes and the
Yes,
beats and the tempo and this makes the person who really appreciate the music understand how
yeah,
genius he were.
right.
Right? And same thing with jiu-jitsu. We're talking about simple things here, not like about back flips and flying arm
Yeah,
bars.
right, right, right,
We're talking about like one grip. You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think one of at the mastery level, like one of the greatest compliments that a master can receive is that every time they're observed doing whatever, Ringo Starr, it's Ringo Starr. Like you've
Mm-hmm.
refined, he has a voice, and that, so to speak, like his drums have a voice, and when you hear that voice, it's him. And I was thinking along those lines in terms of um, like particularly athletes that where you're fighting. Like I think of Muhammad Ali, which for my
Mm-hmm.
age and all that was like a very impactful athlete.
Yeah.
And whether Muhammad Ali was the greatest heavyweight of all time may not matter. But when I watch Ali move and I watch him punch, it's only him that moves like that to me. Like other people
Uh-huh.
may move in a similar manner, and I think
Yeah.
Tyson in his own way, like they had a fighting voice, so to speak, that,
Yeah.
surely is the accumulation of having taken the basics and then
Hmm.
express them in a masterful way. I mean, I think language is like that. I mean,
Yes.
we all got the same letters to work with, and then you form words, and then you form sentences, and then paragraphs and books and so on. Um, but if you don't learn your
Yeah.
letters,
Right.
you're never going to speak in words and sentences. Yeah. Well, when being in training, one thing I'd like your perspective on uh, is there risks to never upping your intensity? I mean, I think it's clear, like if you start going as hard as you physically can without knowing what you're doing, it's a recipe for injury. It's a recipe
Hmm.
for, you know, injury to your training partners.
Hmm.
But is there another risk out there where you stay too unintense, or you don't push yourself a little bit harder? I mean, is that part of the journey too? Should you be looking to expand your edge to greater and greater levels of like seeing what you're capable of? I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I think it will depend of your goal, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
what's your goal to for that specific situation. But at the same time, I believe that we should try to push ourselves,
right.
right, in a smart way.
Yes,
So you're learning the movements, you do it slow, you're preserving yourself, you're preserving your training partner.
right,
Now let's put speed. All right, you're still good. So let's try to bring the intensity up
right,
because with the intensity, you're going to be fighting the reactions,
right.
right? You're going to be learning actually
Yes, yes,
how to fight with the reactions.
yeah,
And this is part of the learning, right? On all different arms that the learning process has. The reaction is one of those that you need to try to cover to be able to accomplish something.
right,
It's really easy to dribble invisible
right.
uh,
Yes, yes, right.
opponents and just kick the perfect ball. But when they're there, is a different story, right? Your vision change, your feeling about the position change.
Yes,
So if I could put that in an order, and that order not necessarily going to be the right one for everyone,
sure.
but I think for me it works well. Is at first le- teach myself how to do the movement,
Right.
right? So almost move by myself. I'm making the grips. I'm making whatever need to be made for that position, but I
Yeah.
want to try to put less pressure, less intensity as possible. Okay, my body's good. Let me tighten that grip a little bit more. Let's kick this leg a little bit more. Still slow. Okay, now let me drill.
Yes.
And drill start to teach yourself again. Let's put intensity. Let's find the reactions. Let's see what my partner is giving or not.
Right. Right.
And you also, with those reactions, start to learn the timing of the position
Yes.
because you need to learn the steps. I mean, you need to learn how to move yourself. You need to learn a basic knowledge about the steps, but you also need to learn how to use the different variations for the reactions and body types.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
And every position has a timing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like sometimes the position is not there. You're just trying to, like I say that in class, like you're trying to open the door with your head, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
You
Right.
can
Right.
only use your hand and turn the knob.
Yeah.
Make
I
sense?
mean,
Oh.
yeah, and you've said this, repeatedly, over the podcast and in general. Like, if you were a timid person, jujitsu might strengthen your
Yes, we'll
ability
balance
to,
you. Yeah.
yeah, will balance you out. And if you're too aggressive, jujitsu will temper that because it forces humility in most every
Mm-hmm.
instance. And in Queen Creek, which is the second school, is part of the family of your schools.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to Coach Andrew out there about kids, and there was a kid out there, and they stood up to a bully, and that confidence the parent was expressing how like important jujitsu,
Yeah.
was. And I mentioned that from this point of view, like for representing the beginner older athletes, um, that process is available to all of us. Like you can
Yes.
get better and better. And one thing, if you are like me, you're a beginner older athlete, let me encourage you not to take doing competitions out of your mind. Like you may think, you know what, I don't want to be a competitive jiu-jitsu player. There's no reason to go to a tournament, and you don't want to do it. And let me encourage you to consider trying a tournament for this reason, in that tournament dynamics are different than training dynamics. And
Hmm.
so it will expose to you what you have learned in terms of like you can do these things well, and then what you haven't learned.
Yeah.
And as long as you're willing, I have found the tournaments to still be safe. I've been able to tap as I've needed to tap. I haven't
Hmm.
felt like I've been but it's given me a way to kind of see how much of vocabulary, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
do I have? And so, because I think as in the training with your training partner, figuring out how to get intensity is awkward. I think sometimes, because
Yes.
you got to really know the person well to know like where the boundaries are.
Yeah.
And then in a tournament, you get a little more of just, often it's a stranger, and it gives you a sense of it. I also
And you're both going for that, right?
Yeah, right.
In a training, sometimes you have that in mind, and your training partner
Yeah,
doesn't.
right. Yes.
So that kind of awkward thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I just feel like in terms of the jujitsu experience for, that if you have a child and you're looking to, try them, to,
Hmm.
even though you may not think about competition as super important to the experience, it's worthwhile in a lot of different ways. I think controlling your emotions, all the things we talk about that. But as an adult, I think it has the same kind of value in that um, maybe you save your intensity for competitions and you're only dialing up. I'm not particularly attached to whether I win or lose. I just want to have, the experience. In my
Hmm.
last competition, I lost uh, in a fashion that um, I did. When I look back on it, I just didn't have the vocabulary I
Hmm.
needed for the position. I actually wasn't really outplayed as much as like I couldn't
Uh-huh.
connect A, B, and C in real time. Like if we had been training, you would have
Uh-huh.
said, do this, do that. And I was physically capable of doing those things,
Yeah.
but I didn't have the instinct, and I didn't have sufficient cognitive. I couldn't make a decision that could have
Hmm.
given me a different outcome. And I could have been disappointed in it, but instead I was like, you know, okay, it was what it was, and I'll do better next time. And my opponent took advantage of like
Yeah.
my inability to express myself on the mats, and
Hmm.
it, all in all, it was still a good decision to do that
And
tournament.
it's always about that, right? Well, sometimes you need to explain something to someone or express yourself in a way, like, and you get caught right in the middle. Okay, so all of a
Yeah,
sudden someone asks you a question, and you are doing interview,
right.
uh, nation, everyone is looking to you, and then after you're like, oh, I could say this or that, I
Yes,
could
yeah,
speak different next time. So what you were doing when you say, okay, next time I'm gonna do this, next time, you are training yourself
right.
to react better, to train your instincts, to train your vocabulary, to everything for that, right? So everything in life, in order
Yes,
for you to perform well, you need to prepare yourself. You need to learn the words. You need to work slow. You need to work fast. You need to put intensity, and then
right.
you need to test yourself.
Yes. Yeah, I would say as I um as someone in their 50s, like one of the things that look different to me now than maybe in my 20s, and certainly younger than that, is how long things take. And so
Mhm.
it just to get masterful at anything in life just takes longer than you think it was. And
Mhm.
there are people maybe with extraordinary abilities that are just naturals, but mostly not. Mostly all of us just have to do the work. And so when I lost the last competition, the way that I viewed the loss was that I could really see it as an extension of just my training, not
Uh-huh.
really like a loss on that day, because it showed me that in that circumstance, I didn't know what to do. But if someone showed me what to do, I would have had a very different chance to have a different outcome.
Uh-huh.
But I couldn't have had that experience in training because it it required a level of intensity otherwise unavailable to me. Well, listen, as podcasters, you and I are probably white belts still. So
Oh
hopefully,
yeah, for sure. Hopefully, we're gonna get a stripe soon.
hopefully we get a stripe soon. But and for those of you, we've gotten some very nice comments, by the way. People about how smart your comments are and how lucky I am to get to talk to you. People have been good about letting me know that they enjoy it. And I think for us, I'd never done anything quite like this before, and we took our
Yeah.
chances, and I appreciate you making this journey with me. I mean, it's been really fun.
No, it's been my pleasure. I always think that I always forget that we're doing a podcast and just is a
Yeah,
conversation between friends, you know.
yeah,
And but we love this. We love to share ideas, and nothing that I'm talking is the main, the only truth. And same way as you, right? Is our perspective, our
right,
opinion
yeah,
about some things, and we also love to hear that from the others. So for those that want to be here with us someday, talk a little bit, and they can share a little bit their life, their experience, their point of view, will be awesome. We're gonna definitely gonna welcome you and gonna have some good time.
yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. So with that, Professor, we'll put another podcast out there into the world and see, keep moving along and developing our vocabulary as podcasters. And for those of you listening, if you're new to us, I mean, one of our primary reasons for doing this is that we really think you would benefit from jujitsu. So if you haven't tried it, we want you to go find your local school and watch and observe, see what the culture's like, but we think you will really get something out of it. But for your parents out there, we feel equally strongly that for
Yep.
children, it's a really good thing to experience. And if you're in the midst of your journey, let us offer our encouragement to you that it only gets more and more interesting, more and more valuable the further along you go. So stay on your journey. Don't be that blue belt curse where you get that blue belt and then you disappear. So, Professor, thanks again. It was a great
Thank you,
great
brother.
podcast. All right, my
Thank you.
man.